Now, let's return to, of course, the major polls that we're following today, and that, of course, is voting in Kenya. A day-long polling process has ended and vote counting is underway across, at the National Tally Centre. Now, it has been a closely contested vote, but new technology has been used for the first time. The Electoral Commission says this will allow it to tally the results in just a matter of days. However, Kenyans can also monitor the counting process online through the Commission's web portal. At this stage, it's too early to gauge exactly which way the presidential vote will go, but this is what the portal is currently reflecting. We have just over 8% of the votes counted so far, and of course, incumbent President Uhuru Kenyatta is in the lead with 57.54% of the votes, followed by Raila Odinga, the opposition leader, at about 41.7% of the votes. Now, of course, a lot of those positions are still up for grabs, including the presidency, the governors, the senators and members of parliament. We're still a long way away from those final results, but indeed CGTN will keep you updated in the hours and days to come. Well, so far it seems that official results will be announced within the next 7 days, but the electoral body is confident that they will come in sooner. Let's get to the very latest now on what's happening on the ground. We're joined by our reporters Jane Kiyo, who's in Nairobi at the National Tallying Centre, and Alexandria Majallah in Kisumu, which of course is an opposition stronghold. Jane, give us an update on what is the latest as far as the vote counting process is concerned.
Well, Lindy, we are actually at what they call the Constituency Tallying Centre. This is where results are tallied and announced, and then they're going to be relayed to the National Tallying Centre. But like you mentioned there, vote counting is currently underway in most polling stations. Of course, this is one of those processes that many would describe as seamless, but there's no such exercise that can be 100%. So definitely there were glitches here and there are incidents like delays of up to 4 hours. We visited one polling centre in the east of the capital where voting had been delayed for up to 4 hours, and officials there told me that they expected to wrap up at about 9 p.m., which definitely means that Lindy, that Kenyans or people are still voting or just about to be done with the exercise. But in other areas, in the 40,000 polling stations across the 47 counties here in Kenya, the exercise appears to have carried on smoothly. That counting exercise is currently going on. And of course, there's been a lot of enthusiasm and interest in these exercises. Of course, it all depends on the number of voters in a registered the number of voters registered in a constituency. So that will definitely depend on the speed, so that we have those results that will be relayed to the National Tallying Centre. Lindy.
And Alexandria, let's turn to you now. Of course, you are in Kisumu, which we know is an opposition stronghold. There's been a lot of eyes on this area. Tell us what the situation is like there, and how vote counting is coming along.
Well, thank you, Lindy. Vote counting is going underway here in Kisumu. We're in the Kisumu East constituency, and out of the 141 polling stations in this region, most of them have closed down and they're still counting votes, and numbers continue to trickle in, but we have no solid figures yet. The lights had gone off there for a little bit, and I think they're coming back. So basically, the IEBC says it's really pretty satisfied with voter turnout, putting it at over 70%, saying that by 9 o'clock, many of the polling stations had served at least 30% of voters. Now, here in the current coalition center we're in, the returning officer will be announcing results for the National Assembly, or rather National Member of Assembly and members of County Assembly. And then she will collate the B series forms and hand them over to the county returning officer, who will collate those alongside the A series forms. Lindy.
Jane, coming back to you now. Of course, you mentioned earlier a lot of enthusiasm around today's voting processes, and indeed nearly 20 million registered voters across the country. Just talk us through the general turnout for elections this year.
Well, so far, Lindy, it appears that Kenyans did turn out in large numbers. We saw it ourselves. We saw the long queues. We had it from the observers. And it's interesting because we definitely know that people started queuing as early as midnight, and yet the process and the polls were opening at 6 a.m. So certainly there was a lot of interest in this particular election. We were all over the country. And like we've been mentioning, this is perhaps one of the most competitive elections in Kenya's since Kenya gained her independence. And like you mentioned there, we've got 19 million registered voters voters. Half of this are between the ages of 19 and 35. That's about 9 million votes that have been drawn from the youth vote, which could actually mean that the youth could be the game changer in this particular exercise. We've got 15,000 candidates who are vying or running for those 6 elective seats. But of course, the keen interest and the main interest is in who's going to be the country's next CEO. You mentioned that the Electoral Commission does have a 7-day window period, but the Commission has been on record saying that even the worst comes to the worst, they definitely only need about 4 days to announce those results.
Well, we'll have to leave it there for now, but thanks very much to Jane Kiyo in Nairobi, and of course Alexandria Majallah joining us there from Kisumu. We are indeed keeping a close eye on developments in Kenya's elections, and we'll update you accordingly.